Hi friends! So this week I'm kind of on a time crunch. I have personal stuff and work stuff and only like 2.5 evenings to film, so time is short. But I still definitely wanted to hang out with you guys, so I picked out what I think is going to be a sort of quick craft kit. I'm going to make a book nook. This kit is by RoLife, and there are actually 4 in this series. They have Time Travel Station, Sunshine Town, Secure Denza, and this one, which is Magic House. It looks a bit like Diagon Alley from Harry Potter. There's magic shops and a little witch's hat and this owl back here. I also really like how matte this box is, so I don't have to fight with the glare of my lights. I've never built a book nook or even a 3D puzzle before, so I'm not sure how hard it's going to be. But there's a sad little baby on the back being banished, so I'm guessing it's going to be a little difficult. Inside the box we have some wires. Do I have to wire stuff? Am I an electrician now? We also have some other tools and little pieces, a battery pack, some teeny tiny screws, glue, more plastic for my cat to steal out of the trash can, a tiny sandpaper, and some laser cut pieces of plastic, wood, and cardboard. There is a very thorough book of instructions, and though there aren't a ton of words in the directions, the pictures are incredibly detailed. It looks like most of it is just pushing tabs into slots to fit, with a little bit of gluing here and there. And there are many tiny steps, so you do really have to slow down and pay attention to each and every instruction. The first thing that I did was pop out all of the pieces. Mostly because I thought it would be cool to film, but it's not the most conducive to actually remembering what each piece was. So I actually immediately resituated each piece back where it belonged until I needed them. The pieces were pretty sturdy, and I didn't break any of the pieces when popping them out, even though some smaller pieces do come with extras. I did of course break a couple of pieces later while building, which were not the ones that had spares, but we'll get to that. The sandpaper in the kit is for sanding off the little burrs where the wood was connected. But after doing that for like 2 pieces, I decided that I really did not care enough to continue that nonsense. I only had to sand maybe 1 or 2 pieces in the whole build, just to get the fit more snug or for aesthetics. Putting this together was pretty easy and fun, as long as I went slow and paid attention to what I was doing. The pieces actually snap in really easily, and most of the time is spent making smaller pieces, like windows, lamps, signs, and stairwells, and then setting those aside until you need them later. Then you combine those pieces to make an even bigger piece, and so on and so on. For this set of windows, the kit has you add a little plastic piece with a bookstore design. I love how nice and detailed the picture is. I hope you'll be able to see it. What I didn't love was putting this piece together. This part genuinely made me want to cry out of frustration. There were only 2 parts in this whole build that made me feel like that, but this was by far the worst. Okay, so the plastic piece has these little tabs that are supposed to fit in the holes on the wooden base piece. Then a wooden piece, which also has a tab, fits into those same holes. So in theory, the snug fit will hold the plastic piece in. Following me so far? The problem is, when you go to attach the top wooden piece, you have to align not only the plastic tabs on top, but also 5 wooden pieces into the holes. And yeah, it was a huge struggle. It's possibly my fine motor skills, but I really didn't struggle like this the rest of the time. This took me 10 tries. Yes, I counted. And I had to build 2 of them. What ended up working was gluing the plastic and the wood tabs into the holes on the bottom, letting that dry for a good while, and then adding the top piece, which I also glued. They did come out really cute though. After all of the smaller pieces are done, you add them to one whole wall. And then add the little details here and there. Gluing on flyers, adding shop signs, a cute little crow, and adding more framing around the windows and walls. One of the things that I really love about this kit is that they really thought of everything on a miniature scale. It's not just like a flat door here and a boxy window there. They really added so many details that add so much to the overall look. There's engraving on the windows. The door is attached from the back, so it's set further into the entryway. There's multiple wood pieces that create a sort of decorative molding around the building. Even the cardboard pieces that you glue on give it more depth and a real sort of 3D-ness. I did attach one little light to the side to wire later, and then I attached the whole wall to a portion of sidewalk. When I first opened this box, I did notice immediately that most of the pieces are all pretty dark, neutral colors. And even after building, it still looks a little too bland and monochrome to me, so I wanted to add a little bit of color. Not my usual crazy rainbow, but just a little something to punch it up. Since I wanted to try and be a little more subtle with it, I decided to use watercolor. That way it would sort of stain the wood, but not be quite so opaque. So it's more of a wash of color, and I could change how pigmented it was if needed. I really wanted to match the signs on the building, so I started with a dark reddish brown on the wood around the windows. I really focused on getting in between the pieces where the lighter wood was showing. It's really subtle, but I actually really like the effect. I painted the edges of the upper windows black, painted in the cracks between this lower wall thing, and gave the stairs and the edge of the curb a black wash too. The actual wall has a brick pattern on it, so I used red, brown, orange, and yellow to paint some bricks in here and there. It looks a little bright and aggressive at first, but once it dries, I really like the effect. For all of this molding on the buildings, I went with gold because I wanted to pick up the yellow in the signs. The paint pen that I tried at first was a little too light because I really wanted a really yellow gold. So, in a shocking twist for me, I busted out an actual bottle of paint. But oh my god, that looks so good! I really like what a difference all of the little changes made. I did also paint the little lamplight and the sign. Building the other main wall was much the same as the first, making lots of little pieces before putting them together into one main piece. The windows on this side were so much easier to put in. They look like little potions or something. And this side has just as much of the details that I really liked. Patterns on the door, extra little cardboard accents on the signs. After all of the pieces are done, I added them to the wall and then the wall to the street. When I went to add the signs onto the wall, disaster struck. No! It's fine, I'm fine, everything is fine. I ended up gluing it back together with some wood glue. For this side, I actually really liked how the green colors of the windows matched the green of the sign, so I left those alone. But I did paint the fence and stairs black, and added the bricks to match the other wall. And of course I couldn't skip the gold molding and painting the signs. While I had my paint out, I worked on a few other things that I knew I'd end up painting later anyway. While building the first two walls, I wasn't sure what most of the pieces were going to end up being. But now that most of the small parts were done, I had a better idea about what was left and what I wanted to do with them. Like this little broomstick. And this tree with a little owl sitting in it. I painted the tree brown and the owl white, like a snowy owl. They also engraved these glasses on him, so I gave him some little gold frames. For the front wall, the one that you see from the outside, it has a brick pattern, but it also has this sign that says Magic House. I'm not sure that I actually like the sign, I just think it looks kind of strange. So I'm gonna paint everything before I glue it on to see what I think. For the bricks, since this is going to be on the outside and I want it to be just a little bit more flashy, I decided to go with metallic watercolors. I stuck with the same sort of color family as I used on the inside walls, so I used red and orangey copper and 2 different golds. I added in a few bricks with a metallic black, but I don't know how noticeable that is. I painted the sign this purpley red metallic and the background shadowy area in black metallic. And ultimately, after all of that, I decided that the sign looked okay more metallic, so I went ahead and glued it on. The back wall was next, and I really like what they did with it. There's a pretty blue stained glass window, and all of the pieces around it are so detailed and intricate that I didn't feel the need to paint anything. I mean, there's 3 layers, at least, of different pieces just for the decorations and carving. The top piece has this sort of magical eye window. I'm not sure what the exact purpose is of a window on top, but it was easy and looks cool, so what do I know? All that's left is putting this together. First, there's this little handle thing that will come into play later, but this was the second time I broke a piece that had no replacement. I never actually figured out how I was supposed to get the piece on without breaking it, and ultimately it didn't even matter because the little handle worked the same anyway. At this point, building the floor and adding the touchpad thing, the instructions get sort of confusing because they have the diagram being put together from the bottom. But if you go slow, you can figure it out, but it was a little strange. I'm ready to add the walls, but first I need to be really careful and put this sign back in. Whew. I snapped the first wall on, glued on a road, added a little bird and broomstick, added the second wall, and some more flyers littering the street for some reason, hung a little lamp, and added the tree and the back wall. Now it's time for the battery pack and wiring. This battery pack system is a little strange, I would say. The way this battery pack works is that it sits in a little box that you raise and lower in and out of the book nook when you want to access it. That weird little switch thing that I broke part of earlier, that's what keeps the box in. I feel like it could have been designed a little less clunky, but again, what do I know? The section of instructions for threading the wires through the slots was not the best. They need more words or directional arrows or something, because I struggled to figure out where each wire went next. Now, the actual connecting of the wires makes sense. Red goes with red, black with black, then wrap the insulation tape around it. And the way that I wired it works, but the book shows the wires coming from opposite directions, where I wrap them in the same direction. And the wires in the instructions are all the perfect length, and I ended up with a lot of extra wires sort of floating around here. So when I had to put on the sides, I struggled with where to stash all the extra wire so that it wasn't showing through the windows, but it was also flat enough for the sides to fit. I just ended up having to tape all the slack down. And adding these sides on was the second time that I really struggled with part of the build. There's just so many pieces snapped together that when the side piece isn't in the right position to snap on just right, you have to look at 20 other connections just to find the one that came a little bit loose and caused things not to match up. It's not a deal breaker by any means, and it was solved with just a little glue and patience, but compared to building the rest of the Nook, it was a bit of a struggle. Those white stickers I pulled out at the beginning go onto the side walls behind the windows so the pictures are more visible. And the bottom and top pieces not only snap in, but they're secured with L brackets, so the whole thing is really secure in the end. Although teeny tiny screws and a tiny screwdriver do require some very fine motor skills. The last step is to add in some AAA batteries that I just keep moving from tool to tool in my craft room, flip the switch to on, put the battery pack back up the butt of the box, and test it out. Success! I really, really loved this kit. It was so much fun to build. I liked this so much that I could easily get obsessed and build a million different little miniatures. But where would I keep them? Ooh, maybe someday I'll make like a giant dollhouse and each room would be little miniatures. Oh no. Get out of my brain, get out of my brain, get out of my brain. But needless to say, I really liked doing this. It took me about 2 evenings if you don't include the painting that I did. And even though a lot of the pieces were pretty small and I have chubby little fingers, I didn't actually struggle with it that much. And I'll mention again how much I love the detail put into it. So what do you think? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.